Okay, now we're into the Bowie albums. I can't believe I've done 10 minutes just on A to B. I'll try and keep this a bit shorter. We're into Hunky Dory first. Fantastic album. He's really kind of taking off at this point. Life on Mars. Quicksand I really like, that's a great one. Queen Bitch, great sort of Velvet Underground sounding song. Changes, of course, great album. Then on to one of my favourites, definitely. I love Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders and Mars. I love every song on it, really. I love Mick Ronson's guitar on this. It's just sort of punk before punk was around, really. It says play at maximum volume on the back, and yeah, it's definitely a rock, one of the best rock albums I've heard. Then we're on to Aladdin Sane. Not as much of a favourite of mine. Still a great album though. It's got Watch That Man, I love. That sounds better live, I reckon. Cracked Actor, Time, beautiful song. Let's Spend the Night Together, good Rolling Stones cover. Lady Grinning Soul is a really underrated Bowie track. It was actually based, I think, what I've heard, is it's kind of a play on words for his brother Alad Insane, because his brother had a lot of mental health issues, and it's kind of dedicated to him. So yeah, an iconic cover, of course, with Ziggy on the front. Next is one of the most underrated Bowie albums, in my opinion. It's Diamond Dogs. Absolutely love this album. It was originally, look at that gatefold. It was originally based on 1984, which is one of my favourite books by George Orwell. And yeah, just sort of tells a story, concept album of about a dystopian future, and yeah, definitely worth checking out. As well as sort of Rebel, which is the hit off it. There's things like Sweet Thing, Rock and Roll With Me, Big Brother itself, 1984, great album. Young Americans, when he sort of went into his Plastic Soul era, not my favourite, but another great album nonetheless. I love things like Win and Fascination on that one. Next one hasn't got a cover, the reason being it's in a frame on top of my collection. But this is probably my favourite Bowie album. It's Low, and yeah, it's basically, it's when I first heard this, I thought, oh, he's crawled up his own arse a bit with this one. But actually, when I got the reasoning behind it, and the reason why it sounds so different to other Bowie albums, is it's kind of his recovery album. He's quite sort of broken by this. He's coming off drug addiction, and he's trying to piece the pieces back together. He's hiding away in Berlin with Iggy Pop, and yeah, it's definitely worth checking out the history of this to really appreciate this album. But it's absolutely beautiful. The first side of it is mostly kind of fragmented, kind of very broken, very mentally ill type songs, which most people that won't sell it to, but I love stuff like that, where someone's really, giving their heart. And the other side is instrumentals, influenced by people like Kraftwerk and people like that, and just beautiful soundscapes that just gorgeous. I never get sick of that. So that's Low. Anyway, Heroes, I'm less of a fan of this one, but it's much more sort of iconic in places. Especially, I love the title song. Of course, it's absolutely iconic and amazing. I'll probably say iconic quite a few times. I'll try not to. There's some other great tunes on here as well. I like the B-side on here, where another sort of beautiful instrumental tracks on there, particularly like Moss Garden, which is kind of a sort of oriental sounding gorgeous one. There we are. Then we have Stage, which is live from that time of the Berlin Trilogy, as it's called. That's a great album, full of his sort of hits, but also some of his instrumental stuff. Just noticed this big orb that's coming from the window here. This one. Anyway, on to Lodger, the last of the Berlin Trilogy, often derided. I really like this one. I love this album. It kind of, I think it's the first time Bowie kind of is influenced by the people that he influenced. if that makes sense. It's kind of almost like a backwards, you know, a cross-contamination thing going on. And yeah, so you can hear people like Talking Heads on this one, and it's got more of a new wave kind of feel. I really like this one. It's very experimental, very different to the other two, but well worth checking out. Then we're on to Scary Monsters. Yep, Scary Monsters, early 80s. I love the singles off this, Ashes to Ashes and Fashion and Scary Monsters. The rest of it, it's a grower. I don't like this one as much as the Berlin trilogy, but it's got some really interesting stuff on it. Then we're on to Tonight. A bit of a Let's Dance 2, really. So not the best of albums, this one. He started to lose his way a little bit in the late 80s, which ironically is when I got into him, as from being a big fan of Labyrinth. But it's got some good tunes on it. I really like Neighbourhood Threat, my favourite on that one. So worth listening to, but not one of his best. Of course, talked about Labyrinth. We've got the 12-inch of Underground Extended Dance Mix. And it can't get much more 80s than that. Look at that, fantastic. Right, Billy Bragg. I've got into him in the last year or so. This is a really good John Peel Sessions album, well worth checking out for anyone who likes singer-songwriters of more sort of political songs. Brilliant stuff. Then we're on to another one of my favourite ladies, Kate Bush. Not one of my favourite albums, this, but she's great on everything she does, really. But I'm not as much of a fan of the earlier stuff. I quite like her later stuff. I know you're not supposed to say that, of course, but it's true. Sort of everything from Hounds of Love onwards, I'm a huge fan of. The earlier stuff is maybe a bit too prog for me, but yeah, anything by Kate Bush is fascinating. So that's Lionheart. Then we've got, like I said, Hounds of Love. I got this yesterday. It's my I got it for £3 in a antiques place yesterday, just near me. I love this album. Everything about it is brilliant, from beginning to end. It's just beautiful. I can't believe she produced this all, you know, herself. Played pretty much everything on it. It's just fantastic, iconic album. Oh, there's that word again. Captain Beefheart, Safe as Milk. This is the only Captain Beefheart one I've got. This is from my father-in-law's collection. Great sort of 60s blues, slightly experimental, but not as experimental as his later stuff. Yeah, brilliant, well worth checking out. A classical one, Carl Orff, I think that's how you say it. A couple of Christmassy ones, got a Gregorian chant one, and Now Make We Mirth, Medieval Carols. I need to put that on, really. I don't think I've heard it yet, actually. Bit late now after Christmas. Now the Clash, I need to get more Clash. I've got lots of their singles, I've got every album on CD, but I need more vinyl. This is Give Them Enough Rope, fantastic album. Leonard Cohen, Songs from a Room, great album. Then we're into the Elvis Costello is another one of my favourite songwriters. If you get a chance to check him out, yeah, he's just like nobody else, really. He's just, the lyrics reward repeated listens, and yeah, they're brilliant. So we start with this year's model. You'll know most of the ones on here, I'm sure. I can't find them. Where are they? No Action. I Don't Want to Go to Chelsea, stuff like that. So that's sort of classic Elvis Costello new wave when he first came out, sort of thing.